welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started.
Gravitas, co-presented by SBI Mutual Fund, a partner for life. Skoda Superb, best in next class. Co-powered by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist. Amstrad, get real, get Amstrad.
Hello and welcome to Gravitas. I'm coming to you from home tonight. There's a bit of a COVID scare in the family. Our test results are still awaited, so we've decided to stay away from the studio and bring you the show from here because the story tonight is too big to miss. If you've been on social media today, you would have seen top American leaders elbow bumping with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Apparently that's how you greet friends in this pandemic. US Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense are in New Delhi. In the Indian system, that's like the American Foreign Minister and Defense Minister. They met their Indian counterparts and sealed crucial military deals. China was watching throughout and issuing threats. Don't play with fire, said Beijing. And it has many players to contend with. India is firming up defense ties. Taiwan is acquiring American weapons. Japan is holding military drills. Sri Lanka, the Maldives and Indonesia, they're all getting ready to welcome the American leaders. It's what we've been calling the Asian NATO, a clear and driven military alliance to counter China's aggression. We'll tell you all about it tonight. Also on the show, the Islamic backlash against France has intensified. Muslims across the globe slam Macron's policies and boycott French goods. We make a case for why it's important for the world to support France. A massive blast rips through a religious school in the Pakistani city of Peshawar. Multiple casualties, including children. We bring you a Gravitas ground report. The big day is still a week away, but a record number of Americans have already voted in the presidential election. What does this high turnout signify? We'll discuss that. And China is releasing the first Pakistani film in 40 years. What is it about? A tribute to the Pakistan Air Force. Why now? We'll tell you in a bit. We'll begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
India has designated 18 Pakistan-based fugitive terrorists or associates, including Hafiz Saeed, Syed Salahuddin, and Masood Azhar, as individual terrorists. The designated terrorists include those involved in the 1993 Mumbai serial blasts, the 26/11 Mumbai attack, the 2019 Pulwama bombing, and the 2016 Pathankot IAF base attack. Pro-democracy protesters in Thailand marched to the German embassy, appealing to Angela Merkel's government to investigate whether Thailand's king has exercised political powers during his extended stays in Bavaria. Protesters in Thailand have been demanding the Prime Minister's resignation, constitutional changes, and reforms to the monarchy. The public criticism of the monarchy displayed by some of the protesters is unprecedented in a country where the royal institution has been considered sacrosanct. India's Ministry of Home Affairs has notified new rules pertaining to the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Now anyone can buy land in these two Union territories. Domicile is no longer required for purchase of land. Police shot and killed a 27-year-old black man on a Philadelphia street after asking him to drop his knife. The shooting occurred before 4 p.m. local time as officers responded to a report of a person with a weapon. Wallace was hit in the shoulder and chest. One of the officers then put him in a police vehicle and drove him to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. The Bangladesh government has ordered that no services will be provided to those who don't wear a mask, making wearing of masks compulsory in all public and private offices, social institutions, shopping malls, educational institutions and mosques. Officials tried to salvage documents from the remains of a court building in Nigeria after it was set ablaze during violent unrest last week. Mobs vandalized and burned police stations, courthouses, TV stations and a hotel following weeks of protests against alleged police brutality. The High Court of Lagos State was set on fire and much of the complex was left in ruins. More than 100,000 residents of Southern California have been ordered to evacuate as fast-moving wildfires threaten vast stretches of land. Powerful winds across the state have prompted power cuts to hundreds of thousands in order to prevent utility equipment from sparking fresh fires. Vietnam is scrambling to evacuate over 1 million people as a strong typhoon is expected to slam the low-lying areas on Wednesday. Typhoon Mulave is forecast to hit the nation with sustained winds of up to 135 kilometers per hour. Serie A leaders AC Milan dropped points for the first time this season as they were held to a thrilling 3-3 draw by AS Roma at the San Siro. 39-year-old Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored twice and Alexis Selemakers was also on target. But Roma came back on all 3 occasions to level things up through Edin Dzeko, Jordan Veretout and Marash Kumbula. Milan still led the table by 2 points from Napoli after 5 games. The Tokyo Olympics is considering setting up an infectious disease control center to monitor the health of athletes during the Games. Tokyo 2020 Chief Executive Toshiro Muto outlined the proposal during a meeting to discuss the possible impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the event. He said the planned center would monitor and support the health of all athletes without burdening Japan's national health system and be responsible for taking prompt steps in case of a positive test.
It was 9 years ago when Hillary Clinton spoke of America's Pacific Century. She was the US Secretary of State. She argued that Asia Pacific will become a key driver of global politics. Let me quote from what she said. "The future of politics will be decided in Asia, not Afghanistan or Iraq." While Clinton may have spoken about it first, the Trump administration was indeed the first to act, to work on a strong Indo-Pacific strategy. At the center of this plan is India, and the clear target is China. This is an effort by democracies in the region to counter an aggressive and expansionist China. We're calling it the Asian NATO. Our cover story tonight is about the rise of this Asian NATO, how America and India are working on a military pushback, and how China is responding to all of this with threats. Why is a military pushback needed, you may ask? Because this is the only language that China understands. You must deal with the dragon from a position of strength. We've said it before, we're saying it again. And for that, military deployments on the ground will not be enough. Look at what's happening on the border in Ladakh. It's been almost 6 months. The India-China border standoff continues. Beijing talks, but does not walk the talk. So now India is working with like-minded countries, allies with a common goal, like the United States, India and America are expanding their defense partnership. A major agreement was signed today. It is called the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, or BECA. It is designed for a specific purpose: intelligence sharing using satellites. This is called geospatial intelligence, meaning data based on geographical location. Why is it so important? Because our world today is driven by technology, and that includes everything. Anyone who sails a ship, flies an aircraft, or uses a smartphone to navigate on the roads relies on geospatial data. All of us do. Now, with this agreement, India will be able to use American geospatial intelligence, and this will help India. It will help India improve the accuracy of Indian automated systems like missiles and armed drones. Now, how does this pact help India in its border standoff with China? The impact, we can tell you, will be immediate. India and the US will share high-end satellite images, telephone intercepts, data on Chinese troops and their weapons deployment. Leaders on both sides are committed to this partnership. It was evident in today's press conference. What happened today, you see, was part of the 2+2 dialogue. 2+2 is the term they use. 2 leaders from India, 2 from America, 2+2. It's turning out to be much more than this, though. Today we saw photographs of National Security Advisor Ajit Doval speaking to the American leadership. He was seen giving an elbow bump to Mike Pompeo. Later, the American leaders met with Prime Minister Modi as well. At the press conference, the target was China, clearly. The Indian side was measured in its response. They did not name China, but spoke about freedom of navigation and respect for territorial integrity. The American leadership did not mince words. They did not hesitate in taking on China and naming it. US Defense Secretary Mark Esper blamed China for destabilizing the region. Mike Pompeo did not hold back any punches. He referred to how the pandemic had originated in the Chinese city of Wuhan and the threat that the Communist Party poses to democratic values.
This morning, we visited the National War Memorial to honor the brave men and women of the Indian Armed Forces who have sacrificed for the world's largest democracy, including 20 that were killed by the PLA forces in the Galwan Valley in June. The United States will stand with the people of India as they confront threats to their sovereignty and to their liberty. The challenge of defeating the pandemic that came from Wuhan also fed into our robust discussions about the Chinese Communist Party. Our leaders and our citizens see with increasing clarity that the CCP is no friend to democracy, the rule of law, transparency, nor to freedom of navigation, the foundation of a free and open and prosperous Indo-Pacific. I'm glad to say that the United States and India are taking steps to strengthen our cooperation against all manner of threats, and not just those posed by the Chinese Communist Party.
The American election is less than a week away. For the topmost officials of the Trump administration to undertake this visit halfway across the world at such a time shows how seriously they take this issue. They are building alliances with not just India, but many players in the region. The mission is clearly to make China pay. Now, the military pact with India is just one piece of the pie, as we told you. The United States is working with more allies, arming China's rivals and conducting military drills to counter the Chinese military offensive. Our next report tells you what America is up to in Asia.
On Monday, the Japanese helicopter carrier Kaga welcomed some visitors. These giant military planes are American. Soldiers of the US Defense Forces were on deck. With their Japanese counterparts, they kicked off the Keen Sword exercise. A military drill on land, sea and in the air. It involves dozens of warships, hundreds of aircraft and 46,000 soldiers, sailors and Marines from both sides. This is a show of force. In the face of the Chinese military buildup in the East China Sea. Not too far away from these waters lies Taiwan, another American ally that faces the threat of a Chinese military invasion. Here too, the United States is pitching in by arming Taiwan with advanced weaponry. US defense companies are undeterred by Chinese sanctions. More deals are being closed. The latest one is for 100 Harpoon coastal defense systems. This includes 400 land-based missiles capable of striking Chinese ships. The agreement is worth $2.4 billion. This comes after Washington approved several weapons deals worth $1.8 billion. China responded by sanctioning 3 major American defense contractors. Now Beijing is threatening more action. Taipei remains resolute. American weapons will bring peace, it says.
The purchase of these weapons will enhance Taiwan's credible combat capabilities and asymmetric combat capabilities. This will also enhance our overall combat capabilities to contribute to maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait.
American weapons are not the only thing that Beijing should worry about. Earlier this year, the Trump administration decided to step up its deployments in Asia. Reports say several thousand troops will be redeployed to American bases in Guam, Hawaii, Alaska, Japan, and Australia, the Indo-Pacific theater. India is taking the lead for the next major military engagement, the Malabar exercise. For the first time, the drill will feature Australia alongside Japan and the US. In New Delhi, US Secretary of Defense Mark Esper hinted at a deeper defense collaboration with India against China.
The defense ties between our two nations remain a key pillar of our overall bilateral relationship. Based on our shared values and common interests, we stand shoulder to shoulder in support of a free and open Indo-Pacific for all, particularly in light of increasing aggression and destabilizing activities by China.
Asian countries are standing up to Chinese military aggression. America is backing them up with weapons, deployments, drills, and intelligence. The military pushback against the PLA's aggression has begun. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
How do you think China is reacting to all of this? It's furious. It is using every medium at its disposal to express its anger, from the state media to social media. Let me begin with a tweet. It is from the Consul General of China to Karachi. It says, and I'm quoting, "Do you know what will be the aftermath of playing with fire?" That statement is in response to an article that called on the Indian government to embrace the Quad. A Chinese diplomat sitting in Karachi is threatening India against joining the Quad. Sitting in Karachi, he seems to have forgotten that India is not Pakistan, not bound to do China's bidding. And clearly, the prospect of an Asian NATO, the Quad, has rattled China. Major dailies of the Communist Party have raised this. And the not-so-major ones, like the Global Times, have a lot to say about India, America, and the anti-China alliance. Now, the fact is, very few people take the saber-rattling of the Global Times seriously, because it ranks quite low in the communist hierarchy. The same cannot be said, though, for China Daily. This paper, China Daily, is owned by the publicity department of the Communist Party. Let me tell you what it says about India aligning with America, and I'm quoting, "Border skirmishes with China may prompt India to draw closer to the US side so as to gain more leverage in its negotiations with China. But blindly following the US's lead will only push it closer to a head-on conflict with China, which would not be in its interests." Now, the Chinese military later republished this piece. Like I said, Beijing is leveraging every medium for this propaganda. The wire service of the Chinese state, Xinhua, has also weighed in on the matter. Their piece is about the upcoming Malabar exercise and India's invitation to Australia. Xinhua says, and I'm quoting, "Quad members need to realize that attempting to stir up rivalry in the region goes against the trend of the times and will definitely not be accepted by major countries worldwide." The Chinese press is living in a bubble of their own. Here is what we found today. A Reuters report. It talks about the alliances that are taking shape in Asia. It says that several Asian countries are building an alliance among themselves informally, and they're doing it on their own. Now, China claims that America and its so-called Cold War mentality is the driving force behind these anti-China alliances in Asia. But Reuters reports that Asian countries are joining hands without American support. Now, the piece goes on to talk about how the Australian Prime Minister inaugurated the Shangri-La Dialogue, an intergovernmental security forum that is attended by defense ministers, heads of ministries, and military chiefs of more than 20 Asia-Pacific states. This was not America's doing. Mike Pompeo's Asia tour has made Beijing nervous. After India, the US Secretary of State is visiting Sri Lanka. He will then go to the Maldives and the Indian Ocean. A visit that would highlight how China bullies smaller countries with its debt traps. So even before Pompeo kicks off his Asia trip, China has accused America of meddling in Sri Lanka. Listen to this.
The US officials' remarks are brimming with Cold War mentality and hegemony, which fully expose their usual practice of interfering in other countries' internal affairs by bullying small and medium-sized countries into picking sides. China believes that all countries, big or small, have the right to independently develop their foreign relations based on their own interests. Any attempts to use pressure and coercion to obstruct normal cooperation and exchanges between countries will not succeed. In the end, they will become the scorn of history, the laughingstock of the international community.
So what prompted this statement? An official of the US State Department had said that Sri Lanka must, quote-unquote, make tough choices to ensure its economic independence over the long term. In Colombo, Pompeo is expected to make an appeal to the Rajapaksas for greater engagement with America and its allies. And a shift like this will only give the anti-China alliance more power because Sri Lanka is crucial for China's design in this region. It's a threat that Beijing would want to avoid at all costs. Now let's look at what's happening in France and related to France around the world. If cartoons depicting the Prophet are offensive, so should be the beheading of a French teacher. This is the message of French Muslims to their brethren across the world. A message that is yet to find many takers in the Islamic world. From Dhaka to Gaza, the anger against French President Emmanuel Macron is only escalating. Thousands of protesters have hit the streets with one message. They are calling Macron the devil. Here's a report.
Islamabad, Dhaka, Baghdad, Tripoli, Gaza. The Islamic backlash against France is only growing. Muslims around the world have descended on the streets. They're calling French President Emmanuel Macron the devil. They are demanding a complete boycott of French products.
यहाँ पे ना सिर्फ सुरीगा लाहौर बल्कि पूरे पाकिस्तान पूरी मुस्लिम दुनिया को ये चाहिए कि हर किस्म की फ्रांसीसी मसनूआत का बाइकाट किया जाए उसको फॉरेन स्टोर से उसको रिमूव किया जाए.
The sentiments are strong. The anger is palpable. And the charges against Macron, several. In Gaza, dozens of Islamic scholars demonstrated against Macron for defending cartoons they consider insulting to Prophet Muhammad. Imams, preachers and sheikhs, all of them are calling for a boycott of French goods.
Muslims must take a united stand to boycott French goods because the economy hurts them more than anything else. So you should stand with your responsibilities.
In Libya, protesters set fire to French flags and stamped on pictures of the French president. They accused Macron of demonizing Muslims and called for a boycott of French products to defeat Macron economically.
We are a nation whose leader is Muhammad. May God's prayers and peace be upon him. And we will not accept this nor be defeated, as Macron and France are the ones who will be defeated.
In Iraq, there were demonstrations outside the French embassy against Macron's alleged polarizing policies. Here too, protesters burned the French flag and stepped on pictures of Emmanuel Macron. They also urged Muslims around the world to stop using French products.
We came today to express our condemnation of the repeated and deliberate abuses by France, the French president and French institutions against Islam and Prophet Muhammad.
In Bangladesh, protesters held up caricatures of the French president. They demanded an urgent mental treatment of Emmanuel Macron and an all-out boycott of everything that originates in France. We will not remain silent is their message.
You have no idea about the strength of Muslims. If we rise, you will see that. So be careful, and we are requesting you not to insult Islam by making any cartoon or writing anything against our Prophet. We will not consider it. If you do, the people of Bangladesh will not remain silent.
In Pakistan, several cities have erupted in protest. The demonstrators are accusing Macron of marginalizing French Muslims. The Pakistan Traders Union has decided to discard all French products. The boycott calls are all pervasive. Muslims around the world have been outraged by Macron's recent decisions. But Muslims in France have a different message.
We have said this very clearly, and we will say this again, that the freedom that allows a cartoonist to make caricatures does not oblige the Muslims of France to love them. They may even hate them, but absolutely nothing can justify killing or harming the physical integrity of a man over a cartoon.
The message is loud and clear. If cartoons depicting the Prophet are offensive, so should be the beheading of a French teacher. Only if this message could curb the swelling anger. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
So you've heard their grievances, you watched them protest, you saw their anger. Now what I'm about to say might sound politically incorrect to some, but it needs to be said. France has become an easy target for upholding freedom of expression. President Emmanuel Macron is paying the price for not believing in the politics of appeasement, at least not practicing it right now. There are 6 million Muslims living in France. They make up more than 8% of the French population. This is the highest tally in the whole of Europe. France will hold its next general election in 2022. So Macron faces a vote in 2 years from now. He is a centrist liberal. Had he wanted, he could have used secularism as an excuse to appease French Muslims, use them as a vote bank, secure his path to re-election, but he chose not to. Why? Because the threat of Islamic terrorism is real in France. It has been for a while now. French Muslims know this. European governments know this. Islamic leaders know this. But most of them pretend to not know all of it because it suits their own one-sided narrative. They have reduced Macron's war with extremism into a narrow calculation of prejudice and Islamophobia. Just look at what's happened in France in recent years. A total of 1,700 French nationals have joined the ISIS since 2013. 1,700. Mosques and Islamic institutes have been found receiving funds from Arab countries. There have been attacks orchestrated by France's own Muslim citizens. I don't even need to give you examples, but I will tonight. January 2015, Paris was rocked by a series of terror attacks. 17 people were killed. November 2015, another series of coordinated terror attacks took place in Paris. The death toll was higher this time. 130 people lost their lives. January 2016, a man wearing an explosive belt attacked police officers in Paris. He was shot dead. July 2016, 2 terrorists attacked a church in Normandy. They killed an 86-year-old priest. The same month, July 2016, a Tunisian resident of France drove a 19-ton cargo truck into crowds celebrating Bastille Day. 86 people lost their lives. My list does not end there. The 2017 Orly airport attack, the 2017 Champs-Élysées attack, the 2018 Paris knife attack, the 2018 Strasbourg shooting. Then we come to 2020. In the last 10 months, a total of 7 major terror attacks have taken place in France. They range from the ramming of cars to the stabbing of policemen to the beheading of a middle school teacher. When Emmanuel Macron says that Islam is a religion in crisis, he has a point. Muslim-dominated areas in France have become increasingly polarized. Some experts consider these specific areas to be the lost territories of the Republic. I'm quoting from what they say, the lost territories of the Republic of France. Territories where the government control is weak. Territories where Islamic laws and customs prevail and extremism thrives. What the president is doing is trying to bring these territories back in control, curb Islamic extremism, put an end to acts of terror once and for all. He has proposed new laws. He wants to push religion out of education. He wants to push religion out of the public sector. He wants to rein in the radicals, make Islam more compatible with the French constitution. And at the same time, he says he wants French citizens to have the freedom to blaspheme. He wants them to have the freedom of press, the freedom of expression. Macron's message is quite simple: constitution above religion. All citizens equal by law. Listen to this very carefully.
I'm asking each and every citizen of France, whether they follow a religion or not, to absolutely respect all of the laws of the Republic. As for radical Islam, since this is what the issue is, let's take it on board and let's name it. There is a will, a demand, an organized method to go against the laws of the Republic and create a parallel order based on other values. They are developing a separatist society with the goal of ultimately taking control, and that's what they are doing, gradually, by rejecting the freedom of expression, the freedom of thought, the right to blasphemy, and this can insidiously move towards radicalization.
Here's the thing. Radical Islam poses a major challenge to the French society, to all societies in fact. President Macron is only pushing for laws to craft a French version of Islam, a version that is compatible with his country's laws and values. Instead of trolling him, the world must support him, because who knows which country, which government and which leader will have to take similar steps tomorrow. We can think of one who should take such steps immediately. The leader of Pakistan, we know he won't. Because this is another example of what happens when you do not root out the radicals. Pakistan is both the perpetrator and the victim. Another terror attack took place today in a religious school in Peshawar. Who were the targets? Students attending classes in a madrasa. Who was responsible for the attack? That's not clear yet. WION's Anas Malik travelled to Peshawar to get us this Gravitas ground report.
This is the moment a blast ripped through a madrasa in Pakistan's Peshawar. 8 dead, more than 100 wounded. Almost all of them students. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the city has long been plagued by Islamist violence. An improvised explosive device was found to have caused the blast. It was planted inside the madrasa by the attackers, reportedly inside a school bag. The device contained close to 6 kilograms of explosives, enough to unleash the destruction on your screens.
I'm standing inside the Spin Jamaat Madrasa, which was targeted to my left, if my camera person can show you as well. This is the exact point where that bag was kept, and it had created a crater. It has now been filled with cement as well. If my camera person can show you as well, the bag was filled with ball bearings and splinters. You can see the damage on the rooftop due to this blast because it had splinters, it had ball bearings as well in order to inflict more and more damage.
This particular madrasa is attended mostly by adult students. A Quran teaching class was underway when the blast went off.
We were attending the class. Our teacher was giving us a lesson. Then suddenly a big blast. I just ran away and saw some people injured there. The blast was aimed at Sheikh Sahib. He's safe, but many students have been martyred. I have this complaint with the government that we don't have any proper security arrangements here. Every morning we have to guard here at the gate for our own security.
The Inspector General of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Police visited the site and took stock of the situation. He said that there was no indication of any threat to the madrasa. Peshawar has seen this before. In fact, on a much larger scale. In 2014, 6 gunmen linked to the Pakistani Taliban attacked the city's army public school. 149 people, including 132 school children, were killed. A dark chapter in Pakistan's history. This time around, the Pakistani Taliban has denied involvement. They condemned the attack in an official statement. So did Pakistan's political leadership. Prime Minister Imran Khan expressed his condolences to the victims' families. He promised to bring those responsible to justice. But the opposition is questioning Imran Khan's resolve. Starting 2014, Pakistan launched multiple operations to flush out terrorists in the region. This led to a period of relative calm. How then did extremism resurface? The opposition blames Imran Khan's misplaced priorities. While the political battle will continue, the victims will soon be forgotten. Young lives cut short by terrorism. With Anas Malik in Peshawar, Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Let's talk about the United States. We're exactly a week away from the day of voting. The town halls are done, so are the presidential debates. The campaigning is headed towards conclusion. All eyes are now on the 3rd of November, when Americans will vote for the last time to elect their next president. I say last time because pre-election voting has been underway for weeks now. And it has surpassed all pre-election ballots cast in the history of America. More than 62 million Americans have voted already. 62 million. This is record-breaking, and the figures are only set to grow. As for the undecided voters, those who are yet to make up their minds, the candidates are doing everything they can to woo them. They recently held clashing rallies on the same day in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump addressed 3 boisterous events. Joe Biden made a low-key appearance at a voter activation center. Take a look at what happened.
And he wants to shut down the whole country. And we're rounding the turn. You know, all they want to talk about is COVID. By the way, on November 4th, you won't be hearing so much about it. COVID, COVID, COVID. COVID.
The bottom line is, Donald Trump is the worst possible president, the worst possible person to try to lead us through this pandemic. And I don't think he just either doesn't have any idea what to do or he just doesn't care. I'm never going to give up. You know, Mr. President, you have to have a little bit of shame, just a little bit of shame, because people are dying.
And he made a speech, and he said that he doesn't do these kind of rallies because of COVID, you know? No, he doesn't do that because nobody shows up. That's why. Nobody shows up. COVID, COVID, COVID.
We're going to be traveling, continue to travel, but the big difference between us and the reason why it looks like we're not traveling, we're not putting on super spreaders.
Now let's talk about the battle within the battle. After weeks of high-voltage political theatrics, the vacant Supreme Court seat in America has finally been filled. Conservative Judge Amy Coney Barrett has been confirmed to the court with 52 to 48 votes. And she has succeeded the late liberal judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This, by the way, is an appointment for a lifetime and a major pre-election political win for Donald Trump. Barrett has taken the first of the 2 oaths. The ceremony took place at the White House. Take a look.
I, Amy Coney Barrett, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So Barrett has taken oath, and Trump can use all the legal support that he's getting because his legal troubles are only mounting. Here's the latest. A federal judge has denied the president's request to be replaced as the defendant in a defamation lawsuit. Now, the lawsuit was filed by a woman. She says Donald Trump raped her in a Manhattan departmental store in the 1990s. Trump's lawyers have argued that he should be replaced as the defendant because he was forced to respond to the lawsuit to prove that he was fit to be president. Now, the judge in this case has ruled that Trump's denials of rape allegations fall outside his scope of employment, so he could not be replaced. Donald Trump is yet to respond to this, but the news is spreading like wildfire, and we can tell you we've not heard the last of this. In the meantime, I want to tell you about a movie, a new film that is hitting Chinese theatres. It is not a Hollywood blockbuster. It is not even a Bollywood film, which, by the way, Bollywood films tend to be very popular in China. It isn't. For the first time in nearly 40 years, a Pakistani film is set to release in Chinese cinemas. Our next report tells you more.
This poster in Mandarin is of a Pakistani film. It's about to hit the screens in China. For the first time in close to 40 years, Pakistani cinema is set to find a space in China. The film is called Parwaz Hai Junoon. It's a military action movie that is now being exported to China, just before the 70th anniversary of the Pakistan-China diplomatic relationship. China is throwing a lifeline to the Pakistani film industry. Islamabad's decision to ban Indian films in Pakistan has proved to be a nightmare. According to a report, the cinema business has dropped to almost 50% in the last 1 year. Pakistan's filmmakers just do not have enough films to release. Footfall with Pakistani theaters has dropped drastically. With Pakistani films hitting Chinese screens now, the industry has access to a new and big market. Beijing seems to have rewarded a loyal partner. The date for the Chinese premiere, that's the 13th of November, was announced just a day after China's wolf warrior-in-chief appreciated Pakistani. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson applauded Pakistan for its stance on Xinjiang, calling Islamabad's backing to the mass genocide against Muslims fair and objective. That reaction after Pakistan's National Security Advisor Muid Yusuf came to China's defense on Uyghurs. The statement stood in stark contrast to Imran Khan's silence on the issue. Since the day he took office, the Pakistani Prime Minister has been asked about China's treatment of the Uyghurs multiple times. On each occasion, he has either feigned ignorance or just refused to publicly condemn the Communist Party. And Islamabad has been richly awarded for its support, with financial assistance, support on the issue of terrorism in international forums, and in Pakistan's propaganda campaign against India. Now Beijing is bailing out Pakistani filmmakers. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
Chile is embarking on a new path. The country will be drafting a new constitution. A constitution that is more egalitarian and, more importantly, a constitution that does not have the legacy of former dictator Augusto Pinochet. But the process is expected to be long and drawn out, and the question is, can Chileans overcome their differences and rise to this challenge? Our next report has all the details.
It's a new dawn for Chile. The people have spoken in no uncertain terms. They want a new constitution. One that promises equality in a rigorously capitalist society. The referendum was held on Sunday. 7.5 million people turned out to vote, the highest turnout since 2012. The result came late on Monday. It was a landslide verdict. 78% of the voters demanded a new constitution. So, what happens to the old one? Chile's old constitution was the work of Augusto Pinochet, a dictator who ruled the country from 1973 to 1990. It was drafted by people hand-picked by Pinochet, then given legitimacy in a massively rigged vote. Technically, the old constitution is still in effect. Chile will hold another referendum in 2022. This will decide whether the newly drafted constitution will be enacted or not. But for now, Chileans are rejoicing. Thousands of people celebrated on the streets of Santiago. They burned a large cutout of the old constitution, danced and cheered in the central plaza, the last remnant of the Pinochet era is almost gone. Chileans capped the occasion by singing Adios, General.
My feeling is victory, stability, of justice, years of waiting for something. Now comes the other part, the administration of this. But I know that we are on a good path, and I'm happy. I approve.
The referendum was the easy part. Drafting a new constitution will be the real challenge. There's a rather long wish list: greater state control of the economy, recognition of the Mapuche indigenous population, collective land and water rights, and reforms to the education and health system. Politically, this is a huge blow to President Sebastián Piñera, a conservative-leaning politician. His government took months to agree to a referendum, despite massive protests in 2019. Many believe his government's policies have widened the wealth gap in Chile. On the face of it, Piñera welcomed the vote as a chance to create unity.
This plebiscite is not the end, but the beginning of a path which we must walk together in order to agree on a new constitution for Chile. Up until now, the constitution has divided us. From now, we have to collaborate all together for the new constitution to be a great frame for unity, stability, and the future.
Sea el gran marco de unidad, de estabilidad y de futuro.
Chile is bracing for 2 years of intense political activity. In 2022, there will be referendum on the new constitution. This will follow closely on the heels of a general election, which is slotted for November 2021. The future of Chile and its president will be on the ballot. Bureau Report, WION. World is one.
With that, it's a wrap. We're leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.
much more edge.